For what purpose does the good lady rise?
I rise to debate a second time against the
Does
bill.
anyone wish to debate the bill for the first time? The lady has the floor to debate for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would urge you all not to get too carried away with stories, however heart-wrenching, of particular instances of victimization. We need to look at this from an overarching perspective and look at the data as a whole. There are anecdotes that people could cite on either side of things. At the tragic shooting in Tucson, where Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords was shot, there were actually several concealed weapons holders at the scene, and one of them nearly shot the person trying to subdue the shooter because there was such confusion and mayhem that he thought it was the wrong person and nearly augmented the tragedy by shooting the wrong person. So having more weapons on the scene is not necessarily a recipe for limiting the tragedy. It can very much increase the tragedy. Even in a scenario where we're envisioning a lone woman walking home at night, it's just as likely that her assailant could have a gun and, again, increase the scope of the tragedy. So I would urge you to look away from kind of single one-off scenarios and think about what would happen if this person had a gun. That can really cut either way, and we really need to be taking a much bigger picture policy approach to this. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Hearing none, the lady from District 9, please close the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank all of you very, very much for your heartfelt debate. No matter what side you're on, you're representing your constituents and your heart. I'd like to respond to some of the questions maybe that came up about this. The $5 million cost is probably what the colleges should incur if this bill does not pass, to protect those students who are now not allowed to protect themselves. One of the college presidents called down to Utah to talk to that college president to ask what was the biggest cost once they had passed their bill. The Utah president said it was the cost of the lawsuits brought on by the universities to try to cancel their law. The second thing, the Fraternal Order of Police have 1,500 on the street, on the ground members who respond to these crises. They wanted us to be sure to say how many of them there were, and that law enforcement is trained when they are responding to an incident. They always consider that there could be a citizen there who has already responded. They know how to react to this. There are 71 college campuses that allow students to carry, and many more allow their faculty to carry. And yet, there has not been a single incident of the harm that was predicted. There is not a single carry concealed license holder who killed anyone on a campus as a murder. I remember in 1990, when the legislature actually passed the first shall issue for carry concealed weapons in Idaho, there were predictions by many that there would be blood in the streets. That's exactly what they called it. And obviously that was not correct. I have had many calls from professors and students, but the professors especially, who are afraid to say anything publicly. And I certainly would never use their name. There was one very brave lady, though, a professor. She was threatened recently by a former student at BSU. He threatened to kill himself, but first he told a friend he was going to kill her. She's a very petite lady, and she has a concealed weapons permit of which she's not allowed to carry. And she's terrified. This person was put on a mental hold for 3 days. And so the question came to the university, how are you protecting her? They told the ex-student he wasn't allowed on the campus. And they have their unarmed guard go around to her classroom once in a while. That is not protection. The immunity question about the colleges, that was brought up a few years ago, and they asked specifically for this, and so it was included in this bill. And I want you to remember that the unarmed man will be attacked with much greater confidence by those who intend harm than if the person believes there could be a gun out there that will take them out first. I would like to relinquish my time in closing to the lady from 11. Thank you.
Will the lady yield?
The lady yields.
The lady has the floor to continue the closing debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and the good lady from District 9. I appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion here. And I'd like to start by thanking everybody in this body. We all know what it takes to get here. We all know the responsibility and the dedication that it takes to be here. And so I want to thank all of you for participating in this and listening intently to the debate this afternoon. Because the best policies always come from an interactive debate such as what you have seen here, where all sides are represented. Because there is always more than one opinion. But this is the place that they're heard. And that is really important because that is almost the crux of what we are really going to be talking about here. This bill is actually a policy issue. And that's really exciting to me because I love policy. And this is where you really have to think about what are we doing here. This is a policy issue. But the policy being discussed here is not whether guns should be allowed on campuses across the state, because we know that already occurs, both by people who bring their own guns and also by the individual policies of some of the colleges already in the state who do allow guns on their campus to some extent and in one form or another. This is the policy here is this, for those of you who have not quite made up your mind. It is not about what has been sensationalized at all. It is this. Where should the authority regarding the Second Amendment, or any amendment, the First, the Fourth, the Fifth, the 10th, where do any of the authority that is linked to those amendments, where should that reside? Should it reside in the hands of a government agency, any of the departments that we have? Should it reside in the hands of a university, at a college? Should it reside in the multitude of the boards of trustees that now have it? Or should it reside here? The authority surrounding the Second Amendment has always resided within the Idaho legislature. The authority given to all the boards of regents of the University of Idaho and the boards of trustees of the colleges, the universities, and the boards of trustees of professional technical education did not have the authority to regulate firearms prior to the year 2008. When the words that you see in the bill now, found on page 2, lines 35 to 39, were actually added. Those are the words we are now looking to take back. They never used to exist there. That addition was actually a usurpation of authority of the Idaho legislature. Those words were added from a prior session. There had been a bill that was coming through, and it was my understanding that those words either had to be added or perhaps there was a looming veto, so they were added. But it's a usurpation of authority, and it took the authority away from the Idaho legislature and it put it in the hands of the boards of trustees and the Board of Regents of the University of Idaho. The Idaho legislature is actually designed to set policy for the state and its agencies, not the other way around. Agency heads are not elected. They do not have the same accountability as those of us who sit in this room do. So some of the questions we need to ask ourselves are this. Do we give up our ability to review rules like we do every year? We know how important it is to review the rules and review the policies that the agencies are doing and make sure that they are in line with legislative intent. Do we give up that authority? No, we don't. As a matter of fact, we prize that so much that we almost want to set it in stone. Do we allow agencies to make policies in contradiction to the Constitution? No, we don't. We have oversight. That's what we want to have. Do we give up our policy-making authority to any agency with a blank check and just say, you need to go ahead and handle this without any oversight? No, we don't. We are in constant conversation and communication with them to develop policies, because policy development is the purview of the legislature. except in this case as the law now currently reads. The Idaho legislature is not involved in any of the policy-making decisions regarding the Second Amendment on any college or university campus across the state. And it is one of the most important amendments that we have, and we have been left completely out of it. Handing this authority over to the multiple boards of trustees has not worked well for all Idaho citizens. It has resulted in non-standardized and inequitable policies, where Idaho citizens are not subject to the same policies. They vary depending on which college and university that they go to, and they also vary as to whether they attend this college and they have a satellite campus on another university. Our job is to create policies that are as equitable and fair to all Idaho citizens, regardless of where they live or where they attend college. And we do understand that our security issues need to be addressed as well. When the legislature recaptures their authority, and that's what you are doing by voting on this bill, you are recapturing that authority and you are placing it back with the Idaho legislature. And that's really what this fight is about, as to who wants to give up their authority and where it really belongs. When we recapture that authority, then issues can be addressed by this body, by the elected officials who represent all citizens of Idaho. Because our system here is one of checks and balances, it's one of compromise. We have to work with the body across the rotunda. This is where issues can be fully vetted and enacted in standardized form for all citizens, and where every single district in this state is represented, because every citizen in this state was represented today in this conversation. But when it gets handled in a back room and between, certain small groups all over the state, that doesn't happen. So I ask you to recapture the ability to address this constitutional issue and send it back to the legislature where it actually belongs, where the checks and balances exist and where the elected officials make the decisions. And we have the accountability regarding the extremely important amendment and the policies that surround it. And there are numerous policies that surround it. They deal with authority, accountability, safety, the costs, the budgets, and all our constituents. It is our duty to address these issues and to do it in a uniform manner across the state, and to do it for all of her citizens. And it is for those reasons, ladies and gentlemen, all the other wonderful things that people had to say, that I ask you to vote in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. The debate is closed. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1254 pass? The clerk will unlock the machine and the members will cast their votes. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change his vote? The clerk will lock the machine and record the vote.
And read the pairs.
And read the pair.
Mr. Speaker, we have pairs at the desk. Representative Gibbs votes aye, and Representative Eskridge votes nay.
The roll call shows 50 aye, 19 nay, 1 absent and excused. Senate Bill 1254 has passed the House and will be returned to the Senate.